14. October 1975. Schwerte, Ruhr. Karl Berger writes in the thin notebook he keeps beside his bed, "They say the past is over here, but the children in the yards learn a history that has no place for their faces." It is a dangerous sentence. It could not be spoken openly in public meetings 10, 20, 30 years earlier. It is a sentence that names a continuity, that a single municipal ledger, a schoolbook, an allocation form, a memory gap can run like a front line through generations. It is a sentence that will be read later by a woman from Anatolia who cooks in a tiny kitchen in a housing estate, and then copied into her own list of grievances in a notebook smuggled into a Turkish language study circle. It is the thesis of the story you are about to read. They are short sentences to begin. They are exact. Then the account widens. The narrative moves by moments. Each moment is anchored to a date, a name, a report, a quote. Each moment expands into analysis. The analysis uses arithmetic. It uses the recurring logic of measurement. It names supply lines, ration coupons, questionnaires, housing allocation tables, the Spruchkammer verdicts. The language uses the mathematics of survival. It uses the arithmetic of guilt. 1. 8 May 1945. Schwerte, rubble. They found the city in pieces. It was the same in every Western industrial town. Streets were kites of asphalt, their houses flayed, the factories were standing skeletons, the river ran with oil. The station was a heap of sleepers and rust. The first archive line reads, Schwerte Municipal Register, A8.05.945. Extensive structural damage, 67% of dwellings uninhabitable, water and electricity intermittent. The line is, the arithmetic of shelter begins at once. The mathematics of rooms, how many rooms left per family, how many families per flat. The municipal department wrote lists. They wrote in ink that bled with the next rain. Karl Berger, 22, municipal clerk, sat in the town hall basement and recorded names. He wrote the names of neighbors who did not return. He wrote the names of the missing. He would carry the set of keys to the rubble, the official keys that allowed one to enter a house, take what could be saved, and lock it again. He wrote Vermiste and Tot. He wrote Haus Müller, no occupants found. He wrote Kinder Vermiste. The notebook would later be a file. The file would be a Spruchkammer record. The record would be a Spruchkammer record. The record would be a place where guilt and innocence were measured. The immediate aftermath read like an arithmetic problem in scarcity. Food, the mathematics of bread. The ration card systems were invented to keep what little remained from being swallowed by chaos. In the winter of 1945–46, the occupation report from the British military government recorded average caloric intake in the Ruhr district 901–200 kcal per person per day. The report uses numbers to shock 900 calories. The report names the black market. It names cigarettes as currency. It lists exchange rates, 3 cigarettes for a slice of bread, 1 packet of tobacco for a pair of shoes. The arithmetic of hunger set the first rules of exchange. The rubble had women at its center. They were called Trümmerfrauen. The photographs show their backs. Their hands are thick. One municipal circular from December 1945 mandated the reorganization of labor. All able-bodied women will be assigned to clearing rubble for the reconstruction of essential infrastructure. Karl filled out rosters. He wrote names like Hannah Baumgartner, assigned to Sector B, Elizabeth Köhler, 7 days per fortnight. The rosters moved in an axis from destruction to repair. They were not romantic. The rosters were a calculation of calories versus hours of work. The arithmetic here was the recovery of bricks and the recovery of bodies. The Allied occupation arrived with its own ledger. Curfews were announced. British military government orders were posted in German and English. Document, Military Government Number 3 Nove. 1945 curfew in effect from 21 founded to 05 found. Movement of persons restricted. Violations subject to arrest. The occupation reports filled with observations about fear and retribution. They noted the presence of displaced persons in abandoned factories. DP camp at Hagen, 12 June 1946, reads a U.S. occupation file. 1,822 persons registered, majority Jewish. Many former inmates of concentration camps remain in poor health. The contact between citizens of Schwerte and the victims of the Nazi regime was a series of proximate shocks and elisions. There were camps near towns. There were the bodies of crematoria somewhere else, but survivors marched into the immediate geography. The municipal clerk who issued keys also issued permits to access the DP camp. Permit number 27-946, Otto Neumann authorized to deliver clothing to SS camp area. The records show occasional exchanges, bread, clothing, help. They show more often the avoidance. The occupation reports often remarked on the social distance between townsfolk and DP inhabitants. There is a cold language in the phrase, a measurement of proximity and of embarrassment. 2. Denazification. The questionnaires. The Allies made a system to classify perpetrators. It had categories: Hauptschuldig, major offenders, belastete offenders, Mittebelastete, lesser offenders, Mitlaftrol followers, Entlastete exonerated. The Spruchkammer were courts of judgment. The Bundesarchiv holds dozens of files from North Rhine-Westphalia. One Spruchkammer hearing transcript reads, Bericht, April 1947. Witness, Karl Berger, born 1923. Job, municipal clerk since 1942. Question, were you a member of the NSDAP? Answer, no formal membership. I served in a wartime administrative capacity. I handled permits and ration cards. The categories were mechanical at first. The Allied questionnaire, the Fragebogen, asked for party membership numbers, for declarations of wartime work, for lists of seized property. The mathematics of guilt was not an exact science. It was arithmetic compromised by expediency. The occupation reports notated a steady shift from exhaustive purging to the need for administrative stability. By 1948, an Allied intelligence summary for the British zone recommended scaling back. The need for trained clerks and administrators in local governments requires pragmatic rehabilitation of those with minimal political culpability. That is the moment the arithmetic changes. The need for paperwork makes amends for thorough justice. The Spruchkammer files show it. Men and women who had managed wartime ration lists, who had kept records that had justified deportations in some sectors, were reclassified as followers. Some received fines. Some were sentenced to labor. Many returned to their desks. Karl's own denazification file is a set of carefully turned pages. He admitted to and denied small acts. I issued orders, he wrote. I filled in lists. I did what I was told. The Spruchkammer record shows a call and response pattern repeated across towns. The just following orders, defense, the evocation of collective responsibility, and the practical need for collective responsibility, and the practical need for continuity. The arithmetic of guilt reduced to the mathematics of staffing who could work as a clerk, a foreman, a teacher, a policeman. The files record the compromises. Verdict, minder belastet. Fine imposed, DM 300. Community service, 8 weeks. The verdicts are a way of balancing scales, a punishment small enough to restore labor capacity, a fine that becomes an instrument of reintegration. 3. Expulsion. The East. The other human arithmetic was movement. The Potsdam decisions and the post-war expulsions moved millions. The Bundesarchiv holds transport lists. Transport 142 27 September 1945. 1,233. Persons, origin, Breslau, destination, Hagen. The expellees arrived with trunks and sorrow. They arrived in a West Germany that had been itself made of rubble. The arithmetic of rooms became more catastrophic. One municipal statistic from the Ruhr in 1946, population increase due to expellees, 22%. The municipal ledger notes the distribution, an attic here, a cellar there, sometimes a requisitioned room in a house that had no heat. The arrivals brought new frictions. Housing allocation tables turned into battlegrounds. There were circulars instructing local registrars priority given to German refugees from the East. The files often show that the priority for the Vertriebene, the expelled, was an official priority. It was a piece of policy that became a cultural fact. Locals who had lost relatives in bombing raids found themselves competing with new arrivals from the East for the same three-room flat. The arithmetic of resentment was precise. A family of 5, a single room converted to 2 beds, 2 soup rations per adult. The tension between locals and newcomers is recorded in police reports. One police memo, 11 March 1946, reads, "Incidents in Sector D, altercation between local family and expellee family over sleeping arrangements. Intervention required." The ledger of conflict is granular. This competition sharpened narratives. Memory began to be constructed in bifurcated fashion. The expulsions produced a new discourse of German suffering. Public commemorations multiplied, memorials for bombed cities, meetings for expelled families. The math of human loss was retranslated. Documents from the 1950s show municipal grant applications to build a memorial for Bombenopfer, bomb victims. The expellee associations applied for and often received special housing funds. The arithmetic of empathy was being shifted toward a universalizing of German victimhood. At the same time, the record of complicity in crimes did not vanish. It was marginalized on municipal pages, pushed into specialized files and, often, into silence. 4. Contact with victims. The townspeople who had watched the arrival of DP camps and expelled persons also encountered survivors who spoke of Auschwitz and Majdanek. There are interviews in oral history collections. One survivor recorded at the DP camp in 1947 says, "We told them what we had seen. They listened from the distance of a road." The occupation reports repeatedly remark on the difference between hearing and believing. The German-language local press printed articles that were cautious, often defensive. There are reports of school visits to DP camps. A teacher's letter, "We took our older students to the former labor camp at X to confront them with the ruins." The letter adds, "The children were shocked. The parents demanded we do not go again." The schools became contested territory. The mathematical language unfolds here too. There was the arithmetic of exposure. How often must a child see a survivor before the history becomes part of their mental map? One education report from 1951 suggests a frequency, suggested curriculum. 1 visit to a DP camp in Class 6, 2 lectures in Years 9 and 10. The arithmetic of knowledge was bureaucratic and insufficient. There were then acts of recognition. In some towns, there were spontaneous exchanges recorded in local diaries. A municipal ledger from January 1946, delivery of clothing to DP camp, list of donors attached. The records show that some townspeople accepted the accounts of survivors and responded. But for many others, there were strategies of denial. Some municipal leaders instructed that the DP camp not be mentioned in school materials. The logic was simple. Keep the Wara narrative narrower, emphasize German hardships, avoid reopening civic wounds that might destabilize the fragile new order. 5. The economic pivot. The Marshall Plan and the arithmetic of recovery. Rebuilding required money, material, and new priorities. The Marshall Plan shipments arrive in the reports as lines on a ledger. Shipping manifests from late 1947 and 1948 recorded foodstuffs, tractors, textiles. The economy responded. The first signs of the Wirtschaftswunder emerge as numbers, increased industrial output, decreased unemployment rates, rising wages. By 1950, the municipal files show new budgets. The town hall could allocate money to repair the school roof. The mathematics of production allowed municipal leaders to take a view beyond immediate scarcity. Karl finds employment in this shift. He becomes, in the early 1950s, a mid-level clerk in the municipal housing office. The files show his promotion, Berger, Karl, assigned to the Housing Allocation Department, 01.041951. He oversees applications for rehousing, for rebuilding permits. He evaluates claims. He knows the arithmetic of rooms intimately. He records who sleeps where and why. The economic constriction masks political constraints. The new democratic order is built on compromises that the occupation files note as pragmatic. The need for stability becomes a recurring phrase. There is a cost, recorded in education policy and public commemorations. The school books of the 1950s and 1960s shift emphasis. Textbook reviews in the Cultural Ministry note with some pleasure that the new narratives focus on German sufferings, the bombing, the expulsions, the economic loss. A 1955 Ministry of Education memo reads, "Curriculum revisions should seek to foster civic unity. Avoid unproductive focus on national guilt in early grades. Concentrate on reconstruction and the perils of totalitarianism in a manner appropriate to maturational readiness." The memo is clinical. The implication is clear. The past is to be managed, not excavated. 6. Memory as curriculum. The arithmetic of forgetting. There is a local school report from 1957, Hauptschulschwerte. Recall tests indicate students can recount Allied bombing raids in the Ruhr, the arrival of expellees, the policy of mandatory clearing work in 1945. Few can explain the mechanisms of the final solution. Recommended curriculum emphasis on material reconstruction over complicity matters. The file is an instruction. The arithmetic of what is taught is a manifestation of municipal priorities. In 1960, a new history textbook is adopted. The Municipal Schoolbook Committee minutes read, "Adopt Deutsche Geschichte für Schulen, new edition." Chapter on 1933-45 to present broad strokes, the rise of authoritarianism, war, and the suffering of German civilians. The minutes include an addendum: avoid undue focus on atrocities, reserve detailed study for higher grades. The schoolbook itself has thin descriptions of the Holocaust. It places the Holocaust in a paragraph late in the chapter, as if it were one among several calamities. The arithmetic of omission is equal to the arithmetic of emphasis: one paragraph instead of a chapter, one classroom visit instead of repeated lessons. Children who came to school speaking other languages had a different metric altogether. Beginning in the 1960s, in Schwerte and similar towns, small numbers of guest workers arrived. The recruitment agreements with Italy, 1955, Spain, 1960s, and Turkey, 1960s, and Turkey, 1960s. The municipal records in Schwerte show the first Turkish worker registered in 1962, Ahmet Yilmaz, employed at Work B, temporary accommodation, two-person dormitory, Werksiedlung. Initially, the guest worker population is small. The arithmetic of integration seemed manageable. 7. The second wave. Gastarbeiter and their families. The 1961 German-Turkish recruitment agreement marks an inflection. The arrival of workers becomes systematic. Factories signed contracts. Municipal housing departments were instructed to provide temporary dormitories. The municipal ledger for Schwerte in 1963 lists Workunterkunde, 24 beds. These bed numbers translated into living conditions. The arithmetic of provision is blunt. How many beds per worker, how many showers per block, how many children per classroom. By the late 1960s, many of these workers brought families. Family reunification policy allowed wives and children to join. The demographic profile in the school rosters alters. In 1970, the primary school list shows names like Mehmet Yilmaz, born 1963, language Turkish. The school office files show the arrival of calls from parents for bilingual support. The municipal budget shows a small line item for language assistance in 1972. The number is small. The housing response followed an arithmetic of segregation. The municipal housing plans of 1968 and 1969 create new estates, Wohnsiedlung, Osten 512 apartments, target groups, expellees, industrial workers, migrant families. The minutes of the planning committee include a candid note, allocations to be made in clusters to preserve existing neighborhood culture and to minimize friction. The euphemism covers a practice. Group migrant families into certain blocks, often in the peripheries, sometimes in concrete tower blocks where maintenance is minimal. The arithmetic of assignment becomes a method of social engineering. Keep the newcomers together, keep the core voters undisturbed. The mathematics of school composition runs alongside. School districting maps are redrawn to send districts with high rates of non-German speakers to certain schools. The Municipal Education Committee minutes show a line. Distribution of pupils in 1971. District A, Schöneberg. 42% pupils with migrant background. Recommended evening German classes. The practical resource allocations are shaped by that phrasing. The arithmetic of who receives special attention is a political decision. Evening classes take place in rooms left over from daytime schooling. They are minimal. 8. The Anatolian mother and the tiny kitchen. It is here, in 1975, that the other sentence returns. They say the past is over here. But my children learn a history that has no place for their faces. The woman who writes it is named Aya Demir in one oral history, Fatma in another. The Municipal Welfare Office files list her as Demir Ayadenithi. 3 children, family reunification, arrived 1972. The city registry places her in Wohnsiedlung Osten, Block C, Apartment 4. The flat is 48 square meters. The kitchen is 2 steps away from the living room. The municipal housing plan shows a stack of identical apartments in a narrow 5-story block that was constructed in 1969 as part of a low-cost program. Aye cooks in a tiny kitchen. Her hands are browned with continual frying. She boils rice and slices cucumbers and boils tea. She writes. She has learned to write in the Latin alphabet, to read German enough to sign forms. But she keeps notes in Turkish. She is practical. She writes lists, what food to buy, when the children must go to the doctor, when the next welfare payment arrives, when the next welfare payment arrives. She writes bitterer lists, too. The incidents at school, her son's description of history class, the words his teacher used. The Municipal School Report of 1974 records an incident, complaint lodged by family Demir. Child reported being called Ausländer Junges by classmates. Teacher intervention limited. The file is routine. The arithmetic of exclusion appears in the detail. i.e.'s children, like many guest worker children, attend a neighborhood school with a high concentration of non-German pupils. The municipal school composition is listed as percentages. Primary school Schwerte, Ost 38% first language, non-German. The file notes the teacher shortages and the lack of special teachers for migrant integration. There are no textbooks in Turkish. The textbooks in German tell the national story in a specific way. 9. School books and sanitized pasts. The content of the history lessons matters. The municipal school curriculum guides cite the 1965 federal recommendations. The recommendations are framed, develop civic identity, foster understanding of the dangers of dictatorship. A teacher's guide distributed in 1966 reads, discuss the Weimar democracy, the Nazi takeover, and the war as a series of lessons culminating in the horrors of total war. Yet, in practice, as archival lesson plans show, the emphasis in lower grades is on German suffering, bombing raids, hunger, the tragedy of expellees. The Holocaust is often abstracted into a sentence, many people were killed. The textbooks tend to universalize the experience of victims without specifying perpetrators and mechanisms. The arithmetic of omission repeats. For children like Ies, the account is doubly alienating. They are taught a national narrative that focuses on German victimhood and on reconstruction. They find themselves outside the story. The 1973 Municipal Education Review contains a terse line. Pupils of migrant origin report feeling excluded from depictions of national history. The review offers a solution that is not legislative. Encourage integration through cultural events. The events are expensive and rare. 10. Racism and belonging. Municipal statistics, personal records. Racist incidents are recorded in municipal police logs. The logs read like inventory. 27. March 1974. Verbal assault on Turkish family. Wohnsiedlung Osten, Block C. Suspect, local youth group. The municipal welfare file records follow-up, mediation attempted, family requests reassignment. The housing office reply is formal, no immediate vacancies. The arithmetic of waiting lists is merciless. At the same time, municipal decision-making uses a pragmatic calculus. A 1972 planning note reads, reallocate 10 apartments from urban renewal program to migrant families to ease overcrowding. The same note calculates votes. The minutes of the town council meeting show that housing policy was not just technical but political. Providing accommodation to migrant workers was an economic necessity to keep the factories running. At the same time, developers sought to minimize the social cost to electorates. The arithmetic of belonging becomes embodied in the daily acts of documentation. Guest workers had to present documents to receive healthcare, to register children for school, to apply for housing. Their names and their statuses were added to municipal ledgers. They were noted as temporary, as Arbeitnehmer ohne Familien in earlier registers. Later, when family reunification occurred, the ledger entries were changed. Each change makes a line in a file. Each line is a measure of inclusion and exclusion. 11. The survivor and the absent narrative. Contact between long-resident German families and survivors grows more complicated in the presence of migrant families. A local encounter in 1968 is recorded in a regional newspaper. At an interfaith meeting, a survivor asks what the meaning of German memory is. A Turkish worker replies, "We must also be invited." The report is anecdotal. The municipal archives hold minutes of such meetings. They show attempts to reach across lines, but the resources are limited. The Municipal Commemorative Committee in 1970 allocates funds for a memorial to bombing victims, but not for a public education project about the camps. The arithmetic of municipal budgets tells a story of priorities. 12. The arithmetic of schooling, tracking, and segregation. The pattern within schools becomes mechanical. Track assignment. Hauptschule, Realschule, Gymnasium determines life pathways. The local education board minutes are blunt. Data shows pupils from migrant backgrounds are overrepresented in Hauptschule tracks. Causes, language deficit and socioeconomic status. The minutes recommend early language support, introduce German language immersion in primary schools. The plan is underfunded. The allocation table shows 0.5 full-time equivalent per 150 students for language support. The mathematics of support is stingy. Children like Ai's son, Mehmet, are influenced by such calculations. A school record shows his scores: German language test, 42%, math, 65%. A teacher's note reads, "He is bright. He needs additional attendances for German classes which the school cannot provide." The arithmetic of placement becomes the arithmetic of outcomes. The municipal files show test results used to justify track assignments that correlate with employment prospects. The engine of the post-war economy needs a semi-skilled workforce. The school system funnels certain demographics into certain tracks. 13. The municipal clerk and the front line in paperwork. Karl sits in his office in 1975 and signs forms. He signs housing reassignments. He signs school admissions. He signs notes recommending municipal internships. The minute sheets show his handwriting in blue ink. He has been in municipal service for 3 decades. His denazification file is tucked away in a safe. He has been promoted. He has gained experience. The arithmetic of his responsibilities has changed from distributing bread to managing a multi-ethnic workforce in an industrial town. The record of this practical shift appears in his personnel file. Berger, Karl, 32 years municipal service, valued for his administrative experience. Karl keeps a notebook beside his bed. He writes sentences that are dangerous because they name connections officials prefer to ignore. He writes, "They say the past is over here, but the children in the yards learn a history that has no place for their faces." He reads reports, signs forms, and watches the housing map change. He understands the mathematics of allocation. He understands the arithmetic of guilt. He has sat in Spruchkammer hearings and seen people explain they were only following orders. He has sat in council meetings where the guest worker question is discussed in terms of beds and not in terms of belonging. 14. The arithmetic of daily humiliations. Municipal welfare files list banal humiliations. One correspondence from 1973 reads, "Family Demir requests interpreter for school meeting." Reply, "No interpreter available. Suggest family bring neighbor." Another entry, "Family complains of derogatory signs posted near Wohnsiedlung Osten. Police investigation, 5 youths identified. Charges, minor. Result, admonition and community service. Family requests transfer. Housing office, no vacancy." The documents are precise. They are a ledger of indignities. IA writes these things down because she needs proof. She knows that the municipal system responds to papers. She files complaints. The municipal complaint logs show a queue. The resolution rate is low. The arithmetic of redress is a bureaucratic measure. How many complaints closed within 30 days? The numbers lag. The numbers reveal a story of partial remedy. 15. The cultural front. Commemorations and the politics of memory. Commemorative rituals multiply in the 1960s and 1970s. There are anniversaries for the bombing of 1943, for the liberation of towns, for the arrival of expellees. The Municipal Commemorative Committee minutes show the decisions, which monuments to erect, who to invite to speak. In 1973, a proposal to invite survivors of concentration camps to give testimony at school assemblies is rejected on the grounds of child protection. The minutes read, "Committee defers proposal." Concerned it may re-traumatize pupils and disrupt community harmony. The committee substitutes a day of reconstruction to celebrate rebuilding. The arithmetic of what is commemorated counts. At the same time, there are small acts of dissent. A local teacher in 1969 independently organizes a series of lessons for older students about Nazi crimes. Her file shows ministry reprimand. Teacher exceeded curricular scope. The file notes the teacher's conviction. We must educate children about perpetrators, not only victims. The file concludes with a bureaucratic addendum. Teacher to be reassigned next term. The arithmetic of institutional constraint closes in. 16. The mathematics of identity in the housing estate. The Wohnsiedlung has its internal geographies. Block A has older German families, Block B has expellees from Silesia, Block C has migrant families, Block D has young German workers. The municipal allocation table shows the reason. Block C, cheaper rents due to distance from market center, designated for temporary workers. The designation becomes a caste. The everyday arithmetic of waste disposal, mail delivery, playground allocation, compounds segregation. The playground near Block C is smaller. The maintenance schedule notes less frequent cleaning. The arithmetic of municipal neglect correlates with social isolation. In the housing estate, there are rituals that measure belonging. There is a Christmas market organized by the local church. There is also a Ramadan tea table organized informally by Turkish women in Block C. The Municipal Cultural Office grants 100 DM to the Christmas Committee. It grants nothing to the Ramadan table. The ledger records allocations. The arithmetic of recognition is literate. 7. The incremental politics of schools. By the mid-1970s, a few progressive initiatives emerge at the regional level. Pilot programs for bilingual education are proposed in 1974. The municipal files show applications for pilot funding to the state ministry. State responses are cautious. One letter from the ministry reads, "Funding for pilot bilingual programs is limited. Evidence for effectiveness is mixed." The program in Schwerte receives a small grant, 2,000 DM, for a summer program in 19. The program has 3 teachers. It reaches 45 children. It is a partial success. The municipal report notes improved German language tests among participants. The arithmetic of impact is measured. 45 children, 2,000 DM, measurable improvement in test scores. But these projects are not systemic. The national conversation about citizenship and identity remains constrained. The 1972 Basic Law debates did not expand automatic citizenship for foreign-born children. The municipal office has to manage the consequences. A clerk's note in 1975, children born to guest workers must undergo naturalization. Process time on average 18 months. The time itself is a form of exclusion. 18. The whitened narrative and its consequences. The Municipal Cultural Chamber in 1971 circulated a directive encouraging a narrative centering German suffering. Regional press pieces mirror the tone. The consequence is a public culture that treats the Nazi past as a national catharsis without a reckoning with individual complicity. 2 sets of documents make the difference visible: the records of trial verdicts and the school textbooks. The trial files for mid-level perpetrators are small in number. Many cases were never brought. The textbooks are numerous. The arithmetic is telling. The ratio of trials to textbooks favors the silent narrative. The municipal archivist notes this in a memo. The visible memory is constructed more by what we teach our children than by what we punish. The sentence is factual, cold, and measurable. 19. The mixture of voices, diaries, letters, reports. This account moves by the inclusion of documents. Carl's Spruchkammer file, the British occupation summaries, the municipal housing allocations, Ahi's welfare complaint, the school attendance registers, the local police logs, and diary entries from Trümmerfrauen are all parts of the same ledger. They are distinct voices. They are complementary. They show that public policy, individual choices, administrative expediency, and private suffering are interwoven. A letter from a Trümmerfrau, Anna L., dated 14 January 1946, reads, "We clear bricks, and I think of my son as if he might return in a uniform. We stack ourselves like a machine." The letter is human. The Spruchkammer transcript for a local foreman reads, "I signed orders for the transfer of workers because the factory said it was necessary." The report from the British CIC in 1947 reads, "Local bureaucrats are useful, they maintain order." The municipal minutes in 1973 note, "Cultural program to include stories of post-war reconstruction." The voices speak to each other across decades. The mathematics of the town's life is constructed in their margins. 20. The escalation of social conflict. By the late 1970s, incidents increase. The municipal police logs register rallies of neo-nationalist groups in districted areas. The housing blocks sometimes become contested spaces. One police report from 1976, rally by local right-wing group near Wohnsiedlung Osten, chants and slogans directed at foreign workers. Intervention, arrest of 5 suspects. Municipal follow-ups show a pattern of fear. Parents of migrant children request police escorts to school. The arithmetic of protective measures is costly. Overtime pay for police, security fences propose.